Good afternoon. We're about to reach the first month of confinement, and so far 166,019 people have tested positive in our country, 16,972 have lost their lives, and 62,391 have overcome the disease. These are the statistics, but obviously behind the statistics there are lives. These figures speak of human beings, of fellow countrymen, and they represent the distress and hope of the sick, the desolation of those who have lost family and friends, and also the joy of those who have recovered. We want to pay tribute, remember and recognize all of them. These figures also reflect the magnitude of the challenge we are facing, the strength of the enemy that has invaded us, its enormous danger. Since the times of World War II, humanity has never faced such a lethal enemy for health, but also for our economic and social life. Since we started the lockdown, 4 weeks have passed. These have been 4 weeks of solid fight against a virus, in which we've witnessed very difficult situations, but also it's been 4 weeks that are about to change the course of this war. In these weeks we've seen our faults, our weaknesses, but also our successes and our strengths. We've begun to reduce the volume of contagions. Although it's still very high, we've reduced the number of deaths. We've started to flatten the curve, as epidemiologists say. We've managed to take pressure off the health system, which is so important these days. To give you an idea, in the days before the declaration of the state of alarm, the rate of contagion was 38%. After a month of hard struggle of the whole Spanish society, today it's 3%. It's still high, but it's not the figure we had before the state of alarm. And we've taken very difficult decisions. I accept responsibility. The government accepts responsibility. We had to take them, and they had to be implemented by all Spanish citizens. But these decisions have benefited all citizens, all autonomous communities, and thereby all Spaniards. There are results which are reflected in the number of hospitalized people, in the work of intensive care units, and the results are encouraging because they are the results of the first isolation measures. So they are not yet showing the effects of hibernation of all non-essential economic activities that came into force on March the 30th, 2 weeks ago. These should begin to be noticed by the middle of next week. And it's not yet victory, not at all. We're still far from it. We're far from the moment when we will return to our normal lives, but they're the first decisive steps on the road to victory. These are encouraging results because they give us encouragement and they tell us not to lower our guard for a moment, because we cannot lay down our weapons, we have to keep fighting. Now we've seen that we can save thousands of lives with everyone's effort, and we will not stop doing it, because nothing is going to stop us until we win this war. The particularity of this pandemic that affects the whole world today is that it presents challenges on the health front, but also on the economic and social front. It threatens to snatch lives while destroying the economic and social fabric in our country. That's why the answer requires combining measures that prevent contagion, that allow the recovery of our health system, while avoiding the paralysis and collapse of our economy and the harmful effects that it might have on employment. The period of exceptional suspension has just ended for all non-essential economic activities, and we had this recoverable paid leave, and now between Monday and Tuesday, depending on the work schedules of each autonomous community, economic activities that were hibernated will resume, and I want to underline that. Just those that we halted. The other activities that were interrupted when the state of alarm was decreed will continue to be stopped. Similarly, there will be general confinement for at least the next 2 weeks, and only travel related to authorized work or permitted purchases will be exempt from confinement. Nothing else. But the situation will be the same as 2 weeks ago. It's not going to be the same for people who resume their activity from tomorrow. We are following the advice of experts on the World Health Organization, and those who have any symptoms or have been in close contact with infected people should refrain from going to work. All commuting workers must be protected, and the workplaces shall provide the maximum conditions of protection. Also, the most vulnerable people are exempt from this job reincorporation on the basis of their age, pregnancy, or heart or lung disease, diabetes or other chronic diseases, provided that their doctor considers that their risk is high and they need to take sick leave. I therefore want to be very clear, we are not yet entering the second phase, what experts have come to call the de-escalation phase. The state of alarm continues, and the general confinement and lockdown continues. Only the extreme action of hibernation of all these non-essential economic activities, which has been enforced during the last 2 weeks, has been completed. What I do want to convey is that we are going to apply the indicators recommended by the scientific committee that's advising the government, by the experts, to quickly measure both the spread of the contagion and the responsiveness of the health system. These indicators will guide us in the future de-escalation and will tell us when to eliminate little by little, hopefully very soon, some restrictions. If we gain ground against the virus and our health system recovers, then we will advance in that de-escalation. If not, I want to be very clear, we will maintain or strengthen the restrictions. Because the first thing for this government will always be the health and lives of our fellow citizens. We are all eager to regain our relationships, to go out on the street, to meet our friends and hug each other. But the desire to win this war, to avoid a relapse, to jeopardize everything we've achieved together during these 4 weeks is even greater. That's why the escalation will begin at the earliest in 2 weeks' time, and it will be progressive and very cautious. First, we must immediately de-escalate the political tension. What the whole world is enduring, and our country is experiencing firsthand, is not just an accident or misfortune, however serious. We're living something unprecedented. This is the biggest crisis of our lives, as I've said before, and it's the greatest threat to health and social welfare in a century. Their task is therefore daunting. It will be long, and it will need the capacity and the contribution and talent of all. The destructive power of the virus does not distinguish between political territories or colors. It does not choose cities or countries because of the political color of the government. We're all engaged in an all-out war, and the answer must be common, united, at the national, European and international levels. In this respect, Europe has reached an agreement this week, which, well, it's true, it does not fully meet our demands, but it's a first injection of energy for the very heavy blow that our economy is taking. We will obviously continue to demand a more ambitious response. We will continue to propose a true Marshall Plan to revive European economies as soon as we leave behind this critical phase of the crisis. But we are also fair, and we value the agreement because it brings resources, and above all, it's a show of the political will for unity. That same spirit of unity achieved in Europe is what we also need within our borders between us. Our country is among the most damaged in the first stage of this pandemic. The damage to life is irreparable, but we can move forward to mitigate economic and social damage. And the way to achieve this is, once again, through unity. We need a great pact for the economic and social reconstruction of the country. All our fellow countrymen are fighting a war. On the front line, the healthcare workers that have been battling the virus for weeks, often with insufficient weapons and resources. They're supported by farmers, truck drivers, shelf stackers, cashiers, men and women who are providing us with all the food we need to make it through this confinement. There are troops providing coverage in the streets and in public spaces. There's police officers using their discipline and rigor, and we thank them for that. There's builders and metal workers, white-collar or blue-collar workers who are supporting the economy, and we've got the professionals of culture bringing in their creativity to the fight, whom I want to defend in these difficult times. We've got teachers and students, parents and children, older people and younger people resisting from their homes, and they'll all do it together from north to south, left to right. That's the lesson of unity by the Spaniards, and that must be the example from which all politicians must learn. We must begin to de-escalate political tensions. Strong language, aggressive language, must be left behind. On everyone's side, I, as President of the Government, commit myself to work on the front line for this. That's my responsibility, and so I assume it. Every day, our citizens watch TV to listen to the fateful report on the number of deaths and the contagion rate, but also the report of the number of recovered people. And every day, they are touched by the amazing image of unity in hospitals, factories, on the balconies of our streets and cities, towns, in our homes, and all of a sudden, that example is interrupted and it gives way to the spectacle of politicians fighting. The de-escalation of political tension must begin as soon as possible, and it must give way to unity, dialogue, consensus and agreement. This will be my absolute endeavour, and I will consecrate myself to it. As long as this emergency persists, no word other than unity will come out of my lips, neither a reproach, a criticism or an insult. Unity and gratitude to all political forces that have already expressed their willingness to this great agreement for social and economic reconstruction. This is the message I've just conveyed to the presidents of the autonomous communities and to the main opposition parties in the Congress of Deputies. I've also told you that the agreement for economic and social reconstructions which we need will only fully achieve its goals with the participation of all political parties in the opposition and also of the main opposition party. This has been a party that's ruled Spain for 4 legislatures and which governs several large autonomous communities, in which the agreement and the capacity for dialogue with regard to regional governments will rest. Therefore, I say this publicly. My proposal is heartfelt and sincere. The opposition, all without exception, must be part of the economic and social reconstruction. Other political forces that represent the joint plurality of a country have to play a main role as well. The understanding of Spain today is different. Spain is openly multi-party, and this reality, this diversity, which is also our wealth, is what we must manage together with determination and humility. In the coming days, we'll convene all political forces, all social agents, including business people and trade unions, all autonomous communities and town councils, and before the end of this week we would like to hold the first meeting for the new Moncloa Pacts. Many things are at stake in this crisis. We must also prove that democracy means plurality, but that it also means unity when the attack of a common enemy makes it necessary. As is this case, the first generation of politicians of our democracy set the precedent 40 years ago. I propose that we draw inspiration from their example and seek agreement, which is necessary. It's true that since the agreements have unfortunately not been the rule, but rather the exception in our democratic political life. But there have also been agreements, and they've served to solve major collective problems. problems. We reached an anti-terrorism pact and we defeated terrorism together. We reached an agreement on the sustainability of pensions, the Toledo Pact, and we have brought stability to the pensions. We all know that the problem ahead is much greater than any we've had before. During the past 40 years of democracy, we know that the challenge is immense. I dare call it massive. We all know that when we win this war, we will need all the forces of the country, political, institutional and social, to overcome the post-war period. We need everybody. We all need each other. Everyone's proposals, everyone's collaboration, the union of all. At least of all those who are willing to collaborate, because the more the better, and I appreciate your attitude and availability. Today, Spaniards, like the rest of humanity, face a formidable enemy, a mortal enemy who's invaded our cities and our towns, endangering our lives, our health, our economy, and ultimately our way of life. The battlefields where we harshly experience the cruelty of our enemy are mainly hospitals and care homes. To help in that battle, to release the pressure exerted by the virus on our health system, we've confined ourselves. To save the lives of thousands and thousands of people, we're temporarily sacrificing a portion of our economic wealth. We're facing a whole new situation that's something obvious to everyone. It's a situation that demands a completely new behavior, which requires something unprecedented in our political generation, something that we haven't done so far. It demands that we all unite in front of the common enemy. We can do it. We have to do it. Spain needs to do it. I've said it in all my appearances before. Since the beginning of this crisis, my only enemy is the virus. No one can win this war alone. Only united we will defeat the virus and the devastation that it threatens to leave behind. In a few weeks, the confinement will be completed and we will enter the reconstruction phase. The best news Spaniards could receive when they leave their homes is to know that their political representatives have been able to overcome their differences and design together a great economic and social reconstruction plan to get the country back on track. I'll do everything in my power to achieve that union. Thank you very much.